Hello, everyone. I'm Readiness. I'm Principal Product Manager for the AWS Storage Gateway team. And I'm here with Darryl Osborne, who's a Principal Systems Architect for the Amazon FSx team. And we're going to talk to you about how to optimize your file-based workloads with several of our solutions that we are going to demo for you today. We're going to start by talking a little bit about the challenges with on-premises based and essentially self-managed file storage, and also talk a lot about our specific solutions and how you can take a hybrid approach to solve some of these challenges. We have some specific use cases to discuss and some new products to show you. Darryl's going to do a really interesting demo at the end. We have some resources to get you started, and we'll be happy to take questions and answers at the end as well. So there are numerous business drivers that are causing everyone of businesses of all sizes to move to the cloud. Digital transformation is more than just a buzzword. Everyone is seeking additional agility and productivity that they can get from not dealing with all of the infrastructure that they have to run on premises, and also with the resource allocations that they have to make. Numerous cost reductions are seen from moving to the cloud. And also, because our cloud infrastructure is global, it's very, very easy to expand your business overseas. There are other drivers as well. Some of the more interesting things going on today are in areas such as the Internet of Things, where customers are looking for ways to build infrastructure out to the very edge of the network, to robots and cars and factory floors. So really, moving to the cloud is in many ways the only way that you can accomplish all of these things. Part of moving to the cloud, of course, is figuring out what to do with your data. Files are everywhere. And anyone who's ever administered storage knows that it's a year-over-year growth story. You always have to find more capacity. There are just lots and lots of use cases and new ones coming on every year. You have sharing problems and security problems. Everything is shared across applications and users. And the growth is actually a real problem, especially if you have physical infrastructure that you need to grow constantly. Just the power, cooling, and real estate can be a real challenge as you get to really big numbers. Planning the capacity for these things is extraordinarily difficult, especially with the difference between organic growth and inorganic growth. Trying to understand how much you need, and then having to buy all of that up front. You need to constantly deal with maintenance and updates of all of the hardware and software, and also the fact that you have a very, very lumpy CapEx cycle. So you get these very high acquisition costs where you have to spend maybe even millions of dollars in large chunks in order to keep all this infrastructure up and running. Just managing it is also very difficult. Installing and configuring servers, all of the manual labor, even when automated, it's just a constant headache. Updates have to happen. All of these things are actually software based. And then you also have the problems of managing security and actually keeping things resilient. Physical infrastructure can go down, buildings can disappear, and you need to deal with backups, disaster recovery, and also the security thereof. Here at AWS, we have the broadest file portfolio. We have Amazon EFS, which is an NFS-based serverless file storage service. Can scale out infinitely and gives you all of the benefits of the cloud with the NFS protocol. We're going to talk a lot about FSx for Windows File Server today. This is focused on Windows-based workloads and is oriented around the SMB protocol and all of the clients that use it. And then for compute-intensive workloads, we have Amazon FSx for Lustre, which is a set of use cases apart from all of these. Let's talk about FSx for Windows File Server. It is a fully managed, highly available and scalable solution for Windows file shares. It's built on top of Windows Server, so you're actually running Windows Server, so you have 100% compatibility with all the capabilities of Windows. It is also fully managed, and so you don't have to deal with all of the headaches of running Windows on premises. No hardware infrastructure, and all of the capabilities are essentially available to you and managed through conventional management tools. We have lots of flexible price and performance options. It's available in both SSD and HDD flavors. One of the great things about it is that it actually allows you to set up multi-AZ, disaster recovery types of scenarios with just a configuration option. And you basically can scale throughput and storage independently. So if you have a workload that requires a lot of throughput, you're able to configure the service so that it can accommodate that. Another benefit, which is a must-have, especially given the types of workloads that we're seeing, is data deduplication. So because it's native Windows, you get the benefit of native Windows data deduplication as well. Migration is really easy. We have a tool and a service called Data Sync, which will do an SMB to SMB migration directly into FSx for Windows File Server. And because you have complete compatibility, there's no need to re-platform or re-architect. All of the capabilities that you have on premises are going to be replicated in detail in your cloud storage. As I said, it is a fully compatible version of Windows that you're taking advantage of, and so all of the features and functionality that you're used to are already in place. So Active Directory compatibility is there. Both Active Directory on-prem as well as the managed Active Directory service in AWS. Full access control lists, up to the full level of scalability that Windows allows. DNS, DFS, the file share configurations, shadow copies are available, and all of the storage quotas are available to you as well. So all of the features and functionalities that you use to manage your users, protect their data, and operate storage systems are available to you in the service. A little bit about the storage options. We have some really compelling storage options for your file systems. The SSD-based storage is the highest performance. We are pricing that at 13 cents a gig a month and 23 cents a gig a month for 2 AZs. For the very large and sort of lower performance, colder workloads, there's the option of HDD-based storage, which is 1.3 cents a gig a month and 2.5 cents for multi-AZ. If you think about, in particular, the HDD-based storage, it's very compelling at the 2AZ price point for very large-scale file workloads, and we're seeing a lot of adoption in that area. Typically, from deduplication alone, you get a 2-to-1 data reduction, and so as a result, from a virtual perspective, your actual costs are about half these, since you're actually getting more data in your provisioned storage. These are high performance systems, and so the possible use cases run the gamut. We have general purpose NAS migration, lots of line of business applications, content management, virtual desktops, and even highly available SQL Server deployments are possible. on this infrastructure. And so you can pretty much move anything that you run over the SMB protocol on premises to the FSx for Windows file server service. And you get all of the same benefits and capabilities. Little note about AWS Data Sync. Data Sync is a service that provides an agent on premises that will find all of your existing SMB file shares and will sync them over a secure connection to your FSx for Windows file server. And this is this is done in the background. It's done very, very efficiently. AWS Data Sync is actually set up to be optimized to get you the maximum amount of throughput. So you can pretty much fill whatever connectivity you have going to your region. It's fully secured, and it also has the benefit of doing everything in an exact copy, including your metadata. So things like access controls tend to trip up a lot of open source tools, but Data Sync does that correctly. So when you get your file system up and running in the cloud, it's actually good to go and fully operational, and all of the permissions are there that you had on-prem. Also want to talk about our new service today, the Amazon FSx File Gateway. We just introduced that recently. Gateway and FSx both have been around for a little while, but we've only integrated them very recently. Customers were telling us, at least FSx customers were telling us that they were having problems when they were trying to access FSx for Windows file server from their on-premises locations. And this is not surprising. Most companies, most customers are connected over a wide area network, and they may not be near their regions. And so latency, the speed of light, is something that can't be changed. And so you have that performance degradation regardless of what you do. And you also have the problem of multiple locations. Many customers have more than one office, and they want to share this cloud infrastructure across these locations. And finally, there's a problem with bandwidth. Even if you were right next to your region, having hundreds, maybe thousands of users going into the cloud directly and accessing all of these files repeatedly in many cases, because they are shared and they're commonly used, that could create a huge burden on your WAN bandwidth. And so this can become a very costly problem to solve. And so, if you do want to reduce your physical NAS infrastructure, you don't want to actually take all that money and throw it at bandwidth. And so the solution for all of this is the Amazon FSx File Gateway. It allows you to extend FSx for Windows File Server into your data center and your remote locations. It's deployed as a VM or a hardware appliance, or even an EC2 for some cross-region applications. And our demo today will actually be an EC2. It's a local cache of recently used files, and so your users get the benefit of having the cached copies locally, and so latency is not a problem. And also, because that cache is preventing the request from going out into the cloud, you also get a substantial reduction in bandwidth. There's WAN optimization built in. So one of the things that the gateway does very well is it reduces the number of round trips going back and forth from your region. So in a high latency environment, the number of round trips can create a huge performance problem. We've reduced them to 1 or 2 in most operations. And so the system works optimally even if an operation needs to go into the cloud. And of course, the gateway is centrally managed through your AWS console. So there's a single pane of glass. You can manage your FSx instances and your FSx file gateway through the same console. Let's talk a little bit about how this all works. The gateway itself sits on premises. In order to connect to your FSx for Windows file systems, you need to have private connectivity, and we'll get into some of the details in the next slide. That means either a site-to-site VPN or a direct connect is a requirement. And the FSx file gateway is deployed locally, has up to 64 terabytes of cache that can be supported, and 500 active clients per gateway. You can deploy multiple FSx file gateways and share the same storage across multiple locations, thereby saving you some money from having to actually set up the storage in each location. And you get high availability with VMware. So you could set up your FSx file gateway to be monitored by VMware clustering, and so it will get restarted if you lose a server. Digging down deeper, how it all works. In order to set up a gateway, you just simply need to create the gateway. Make sure you have a data path going into your FSx file systems and your storage gateway endpoints. Because all of these things are done over private connection, we will require you to have a number of ports set up. Obviously the SOBv3 port, port 445. You do have to set up the conventional ports that you do for all of our storage gateways, and also Active Directory, DNS, and NTP. So essentially, by setting up a gateway, you're creating a distributed system. We have very, very detailed instructions and installation wizards to guide you through all of the steps. You will configure a cache, you will join a domain, and your clients can immediately connect. Because the gateway and your FSx for Windows file system are in the same domain, you essentially inherit all the same user permissions from your file system on the cache, so there's no additional overhead for administering this. That makes it very easy to just change permission on file system objects, either at the edge in the cache or an FSx for Windows, and it just gets propagated throughout the different caches in the system. One of the most important things that we did for FSx for Windows file and FSx for Windows gateway was to integrate the backup strategy. In most cases, you have users that are running files or file copies that, from time to time, they'll either have some form of virus or they'll just lose data. They may screw something up, and they're going to want to go to a backup. And so it's very, very important to have the capability to bring their file data back if it's lost. Both from a compliance standpoint, but also from a business continuity standpoint. And so one of the things that we did was to integrate the FSx file gateway with the backup capability of Amazon FSx for Windows File Server. So whenever either an admin initiates a backup or an automated backup kicks off, what happens is that FSx for Windows File Server will reach out to all of the connected file gateways and ask them to flush whatever uncommitted data they have. So essentially what we're doing is creating a point-in-time application consistent copy of your file system, even though you have clients across multiple locations using these files. So you can always be assured that when the backup happens and gets copied to S3, it's actually an application consistent backup, and your users will be able to recover their files successfully. We also added very simple and predictable pricing. So the gateway is just a fixed hourly fee, nothing more. It's 69 cents per hour per gateway. There are no fees for ingest, no fees for capacity, and whatever storage you use is billed at the FSX for Windows standard rates. In other words, you bring in your FSX for Windows file storage and you pay for that. Data transfer out, of course, out of region is at the standard dollar per gigabyte, which varies by region. But because you have the gateway, that actually is reduced by a large amount. And so, for the most part, the fixed hourly fee is what you pay. So from here, I'd like to introduce Darryl once again and actually get him started on the demo. He's got a really interesting demo for us. Darryl?
This is a diagram of my Amazon FSX File Gateway demo environment. In the US East 1 region, I have my Amazon FSX for Windows File Server joined to an AWS Managed Microsoft AD. And then in the US West 1 environment, I have my EC2 instance and a file gateway. So I'm going to go ahead and map some drives on this EC2 instance. The first one is going to be to my Amazon FSX for Windows File Server in US East 1. So I'm going to go ahead and take the DNS name and map the default file share. And this is going to be the Z drive on this Windows EC2 instance. I'm then going to go ahead and do the same thing, but now for my Amazon FSX file gateway, which is deployed in the local AWS region, which is simulating a on-premises environment. So from the storage gateway console, I go ahead and take a look at the FSX file systems. I grab the IP address of my FSX file gateway, and I'm going to use that as a part of the UNC name or UNC path to my default file share. Now I'm going to have two File Explorer windows, one pointing to the remote Amazon FSX for Windows File Server in US East 1, and the other one to the local FSX file gateway in US West 1. So basically what we've done here on this Windows EC2 instance, I've mapped a drive, the Z drive, to the remote Windows File Server. And then the Y drive I've mapped to the local FSX file gateway. First thing I'm going to do is going to go ahead and create a new test file on the Z drive, which is the remote FSX for Windows File Server. And I'm calling it test1. I'm going to go ahead and refresh the File Explorer window. And you notice that it doesn't show up immediately. When you set up a FSX file gateway, there is a automated cache refresh setting, which sets the refresh interval. So after a few minutes, the file will appear on the file gateway. For this next test, I'm going to create a new file on the FSX file gateway, and you notice it immediately gets pushed to the remote FSX for Windows File Server. So any new files are immediately pushed to the FSX for Windows File Server. Now I'm going to go ahead and open up a test file and just type in my name, make a change to it. This file is on the remote FSX for Windows File Server. And now I'm going to see if that change has been pushed to the file gateway. And as you can see, it hasn't been pushed yet. Again, this goes back to that refresh interval, and I have this set at 5 minutes. This TTL is really the length of time since the last refresh. So now that it's been a few minutes and I've sped up the video, we'll go ahead and refresh it one more time, and we'll see that the changes have now been pushed from the FSX for Windows File Server. And now I can go ahead and open up that file on the local cache of the FSX file gateway, and my change is there. In this test, I'm going to go ahead and just type in my last name in the test2 file. This again is in the this file or change that I'm making is on the FSX file gateway. And now I'm going to open it up, the same file on the remote FSX for Windows File Server. You can see that change was immediately pushed back to the FSX for Windows File Server. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete the test1 file from the remote FSX for Windows File Server. And I'm going to go ahead and refresh the File Explorer window of the local FSX file gateway. And you can see the file is still there. Again, this goes back to that refresh interval. After 5 minutes, and I sped up the video, that file is going to be removed and deleted. Now I'm going to delete the file on the local FSX file gateway. And again, immediately that change has been propagated back down to the FSX for Windows file server. Now for my next test, I'm going to be doing some write tests using disk speed. So I'm going to create a 1 gig sparse file, and I'm going to use disk speed to go ahead and write to that file. I'm writing for 2 minutes, so I've sped up the video. And as we can see here, I was able to achieve a write IO throughput of 115 megabytes per second. This is writing all the way back to the remote FSX for Windows file server. I'm going to do the exact same test, create a 1 gig sparse file on the local FSX file gateway, and go ahead and write to that file as well using disk speed. I've sped up the video, and after 2 minutes, we actually get the results. And now we're able to achieve a write IO throughput of 313 megabytes per second when I'm writing to that local file gateway. So as you can see here, we much better write performance, and disk speed also gives us latency performance, much better experience on the FSX file gateway. Now for my read test, I'm going to go ahead and open up a stopwatch application to test some of the performance between opening up files between remote FSX for Windows file server and the local FSX file gateway. So I opened up a 10,000 record CSV file on the FSX file server, and it took a couple of seconds. I'm opening up the same file, and you can see there's a noticeable difference. It was much faster on the local FSX file gateway. This is a 1 million record CSV file. I'm opening up on the remote FSX for Windows file server. So I'm speeding up the timer just for the sake of time. And we can see that after about 15, 16 seconds, I was able to open up that 1 million record CSV file from the remote FSX for Windows file server. I'm going to go ahead and reset the timer and open up that same file, but this time from the local cache on the FSX file gateway. As you can see, we were able to read that entire file within about 1.5 seconds. So much faster when we're reading data from the local FSX file gateway. This other test is going to be a 5 million record CSV file. So again, for the sake of time, I'm speeding up the video. And after 1 minute and about 22 seconds, we're able to read that 5 million record CSV file. We'll go ahead and do the exact same test, but this time reading from the local cache of the FSX file gateway. And as you can see, this is only going to take a few seconds. And now instead of 1 minute and 21 seconds, we were able to read that in 8.5 seconds. So my next test, again, I'm going to be using disk speed, and I'm going to be reading the files I created earlier. This first read is going to be back to the FSX for Windows file server in US East 1. And I was able to achieve about 99 megabytes per second throughput. I'm going to go ahead and run the test again. Also reading from the remote FSX for Windows file server. And I got about the same performance, a little slower, but roughly the same performance. Now what I'm going to do is run that same test, but now I'm going to be reading from the local FSX file gateway. And we achieved a much better throughput, 378 megabytes per second throughput. I'm going to run that test again because that first read basically read the file from the FSX for Windows file server, and then it was cached. So the subsequent read is now reading it more from that cache, and I was able to get 668 megabytes per second throughput. So as you can see here, the throughput is much faster, much better on the local FSX for file gateway and the latency is much better on the local FSX file gateway versus the Amazon FSX for Windows file server. That concludes my demo. Back to you, Laz.
Thanks, Darryl. Really cool demo there. I just wanted to finish off by pointing everyone at some resources on our website where they can find out more about both these services, the Amazon FSx for Windows File Server product page, as well as the Amazon FSx File Gateway product page. We've got some great content in our storage blog on how to use this, and we have a number of workshops that we're putting together. It's very easy to set up the service, download a gateway, and try all the things that Darryl just did out. And so hoping that you guys can all go out and try it. I think at this point, we're ready to take some questions, if there are any on the bridge. Thanks, everyone.